Good evening, fellow explorers. Tonight, you are living on the northern coast of an island that will one day be called Sicily. But for you, it's just the world. The time is around 11,000 BCE, and your daily schedule is really simple. Find food, make fire, try not to get eaten, repeat. There are no work reports, no traffic jams, and no phone notifications because you don't have a phone. On the other hand, there's also no coffee, no medicine, and your dentist is a holy man who thinks a tooth arch is caused by an angry badger spirit, so you win some, you lose some. Tonight, we're going to live a day in your life. We'll feel the chill of a Stone Age morning, track animals across rough land that has never seen a paved road, and feel the weight of what it takes to survive. But this isn't just a story about survival. It's about a secret, a story carved into the stone heart of a mountain, a confusing scene of what is either a very serious ritual sacrifice or a surprisingly modern dance party. This story, your story, was accidentally found again 13,000 years later when forgotten boxes of bullets from a modern war blew a hole in the side of the cave, proving that history's greatest finder is sometimes a huge explosion. Before we begin this journey together, write in the comments where you are listening from. It's interesting to learn where in the world you are. Also, please take a moment to like this video if you enjoy these personal looks into the past, and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Now, dim the lights, find a comfortable position, and prepare to discover the very human story behind one of history's most lasting and interesting mysteries. Chapter 1, The Taste of Morning. The first thing you're really aware of is the smell. It's a complex, layered, and very personal smell that no perfume maker would ever dare to bottle. It's the smell of 20 people sleeping in a poorly aired hut. It's the scent of wood smoke that has worked its way into every fiber of your animal skin clothing, your hair, and quite possibly your soul. It's the smell of damp earth, old greasy animal furs, and the faint, sweet smell of yesterday's dinner. Congratulations, you're living in a state of what future historians will politely call smelly immersion, but what you'd call Thursday. You force your eyes open. The world is a blurry, smoky darkness broken up by the soft glowing heart of the shared fire pit. It's died down to hot coals, pulsing like a tired lung. The only light comes from this, and a sliver of early dawn grey seeping through the animal hide flap that serves as a door. You're curled on a sleeping platform of packed earth and pine branches, which sounds rustic and charming until you remember that the branches have been there for 3 seasons and are now mostly just fragrant dust and the ghosts of pine needles past. The heavy buffalo hide you're using as a blanket weighs more than a modern child and smells faintly of regret. You try to move, but your leg is pinned by the considerable weight of your uncle, a man who sleeps with the quiet grace of a rock slide. He's snoring with a wet, thumping rhythm that you're convinced keeps predators away. This is your life. No privacy, no personal space, just a constant, warm and occasionally gassy closeness to every single person you're related to. It builds character or anger the jury's still out. With the stealth of a hunter, you carefully pull yourself free and rise into the crouch. That is the default posture for anyone over 5 feet tall in this dwelling. The air is thick and heavy. You move with practiced ease through the landscape of sleeping bodies, a skill you learned as a child when a misplaced foot could earn you a grunt, a kick, or a lengthy complaint from your aunt about the declining quality of sleep these days. You push aside the heavy hide door and step outside. The cold is a slap in the face. It's a clean, sharp, unforgiving cold that clears the smoke from your lungs and makes your eyes water. The air tastes of salt from the sea, a vast, dark presence you can hear but not yet see, and the metallic taste of chilled stone. You look up. The sky is a vast canopy of stars, more than any city dweller of the future could ever imagine, scattered like diamond dust on a bolt of dark hide. For a moment, it's just you and the immense, silent cosmos, and a feeling of deep awe washes over you. This is quickly followed by the feeling of being really cold, and you pull your tunic tighter. Another shadow separates itself from the gloom of the hut. You don't need to see his face to know it's Kyle. He moves with a silence that's different from yours. Yours is practiced, a skill you learned. His is natural, as if he's made of the same stuff as the morning shadows. He comes to stand beside you, and you both look out at the world, a comfortable silence stretching between you. This is your morning ritual, a silent acknowledgement that you both see the same things in the quiet moments before the world wakes up. He pushes something into your hand. It's a small, dense cake made from pounded acorns and dried berries. It's gritty, not particularly sweet, and so hard you could probably use it to knock out a rabbit if you threw it right. But it's food, it's fuel. As you chew on it, appreciating the way it makes your jaw work, Kyle leans his spear against the hut wall and begins retying a loose binding on his hide leggings. His hands are remarkable. They're calloused and scarred from a lifetime of work, but his fingers move with a nimble, precise economy. You've seen those hands craft a perfect spear point from a chunk of flint and gently set a broken bone on a hunting dog. The other hunters are good. They are strong and brave. but they hunt with bravado, with shouts and chest pounding. You and Kyle, you hunt with your minds. You speak a language of lifted eyebrows, slight head tilts, and the kind of shared silence that says more than a shouted conversation ever could. The rest of the clan sees it as an effective partnership, a useful quirk. You've never felt the need to give it a name. It's just the way things are, like the sunrise or the cold winds from the west. Dear, he says. His voice is a low rumble, and you notice his breath plumes in the frigid air. They'll be low. Good, you reply. The single word, a complete conversation. It means you understand the plan. It means you're ready. It means you'd rather face a herd of angry wild cattle than spend another minute listening to your uncle's snoring. The sky is turning from dark blue to a bruised purple. The camp is beginning to stir. The day is here, and it's hungry. Chapter 2, The Rhythm of the Hunt. Leaving the camp is like shedding a heavy skin. You leave behind the smells, the noise, the cramped family life of the clan, and enter a world of clean lions and sharp focus. The hunt is not a job. It is a state of being. To be successful, you must unbecome yourself. You must become an extension of the landscape. You and Kyle move with a purpose that is both relaxed and super alert. The first hour is just walking, putting distance between you and the settlement, letting the rhythms of the wild world settle over you. Your feet, clad in soft deerskin shoes, feel the ground with a closeness a booted person will never know. You can tell the difference between loose rocks and solid bedrock, between damp earth and dry pine needles, just by the pressure on the soles of your feet. This is information. Everything is information. The landscape here is a rugged, unforgiving teacher. The ground is a tilted plain of limestone, broken into jagged outcrops and dangerous slopes, dotted with hardy, wind-twisted trees and thorny shrubs. It's the kind of terrain that chews up the careless and spits out the clumsy. You move through it, not with speed, but with a relentless, energy-saving pace that you can maintain from sunrise to sunset. For hours you are silent. Your communication is a form of mind-reading, born of long practice. Kyle pauses, tilting his head. You freeze instantly, your eyes scanning, your ears straining. He's heard something. You missed the distant clatter of a dislodged stone. It could be anything, a wild goat, a falling rock, or it could be your prey. You wait motionless for a full 5 minutes. The wind sighs through the sparse branches. Nothing. Kyle gives a slight shake of his head, and you move on. A false alarm, but the drill was perfect. Patience isn't a virtue, it's a weapon. And boredom is a luxury you can't afford. Your mind is constantly working, processing a flood of data, the direction of the wind, which carries your scent, the position of the sun, which casts your shadow, the tracks on the ground. You note the day-old prints of a wild boar, the fresh droppings of a fox. You are reading the land's daily newspaper, and it tells you everything you need to know. Then you see it. From your lookout point on a high ridge, you spot movement in a shallow, wooded valley below. It's not the wind. It's the distinct, rhythmic flick of an ear. You drop into a low crouch, your body instantly disappearing behind a thorny bush. You raise a closed fist the signal. Kyle, 100 yards to your left, melts into the earth as if he were never there. It's a small herd of red deer, the prize of this landscape. There are 4 females and a young, cocky-looking male who seems more interested in scratching an itch on his flank than watching for danger. They are browsing peacefully, blissfully unaware that their day is about to get significantly worse. They are upwind the hunter's jackpot. This is the pivot point, the moment of quiet intensity where the outcome is decided. A clumsy approach, a poorly planned ambush, and all you'll have to show for your day's work is tired legs and a rumbling stomach. You and Kyle lock eyes across the distance. No words are needed. The landscape itself dictates the plan. The shape of the valley, the cluster of boulders to the east, the dense thicket to the west, it's a tactical map, and you've already solved the problem. He begins a long, slow circle to the south, a ghost in the landscape. Your job is to stay put, to be a statue, a rock, a thing of no interest. You watch him move. Even from this distance, you can appreciate his skill. He doesn't just use cover, he becomes it. He moves when the wind rustles the leaves, his outline broken by the twisted trunks of the oaks. It takes him nearly an hour to get into position, an hour in which you do nothing but watch, wait, and try to convince a particularly bold lizard that your leg is not a suitable place for sunbathing. When he is finally in place, he gives you the signal, a barely noticeable flash of a pale stone held in his palm. It's your turn. Your job is not to charge, but to apply pressure. You are not a wolf. You are a herding dog. You rise slowly, deliberately, letting them see you not as a threat, but as an oddity, a thing that doesn't belong. The nearest female lifts her head, her huge dark eyes fixed on you. She stamps a hoof, a sharp snort of alarm. The male stops scratching and looks your way, a picture of annoyed indignation. They are confused, not yet terrified. That's the key. You take a few slow steps to your left. They mirror your movement, shuffling nervously to their right exactly where you want them to go, towards the narrow rocky outcrop where Kyle is waiting, his spear thrower already in his hand. You are steering them, gently but surely, towards their fate. It's a cruel kind of magic, a chess game where the pieces are alive. Chapter 3. The Weight of a Life. The moment the trap is sprung is a blur of controlled violence. The deer, nudged by your steady, unnerving presence, finally break into a trot, heading for the perceived safety of the rocks. You hear a sharp, whip-like crack as Kyle puts his entire body into the throw. The spear thrower acts as a lever, multiplying the force of his arm, launching the spear with a speed and power that seems supernatural. It's a marvel of physics that won't be matched for another 10,000 years until the invention of the bow. The spear flies true, a straight, dark line against the pale rock. It strikes one of the females high on the shoulder, a devastating, mortal blow. The animal gives a choked cry and stumbles, its momentum carrying it forward a few more steps before it collapses. The rest of the herd, now in a full-blown panic, scatters in every direction, vanishing into the landscape as if they were never there. And then silence, the sudden, heavy quiet that always follows a death. The wind still whispers. The sun still shines, but the world has been fundamentally altered. You and Kyle approach the fallen animal slowly, with a respect that borders on reverence. It's not a trophy, it is a gift, a life given so that yours may continue. The female's great, liquid eyes are already glazing over. You place your hand on her flank, feeling the last of the warmth fade from her body. You murmur a few quiet words of thanks to her spirit, a promise that no part of her will be wasted. It's a hunter's prayer, a recognition of the brutal contract that underpins your entire existence. Now the truly hard work begins. The hunt is the exciting part. The butchering is a job. It's a messy, smelly, and physically demanding task. With your razor-sharp flint knives, you begin the methodical process of breaking down the carcass. The skill lies in knowing the animal's anatomy, in using the knife with precision to separate hide from muscle, muscle from bone. It's an intimate and slightly grim education in biology. The smell of fresh, coppery blood is thick in the air. The steam rises from the body cavity into the cool afternoon. You work as a team, your movements efficient and synchronized from years of practice. You remove the organs first, setting aside the heart and liver for the evening's meal the hunters share, to be eaten fresh. The stomach will be cleaned and used as a water container. The intestines will be scraped and braided into strong cord. Nothing is left to waste. Any part of this creature would be the greatest offense, a deep disrespect to the spirit you just thanked. Once the animal is quartered, the real challenge begins: transportation. A full-grown deer is a heavy, awkward burden. You lash the quarters onto a makeshift travois, two long poles that you will drag behind you. The journey back to the settlement is a slow, grinding ordeal. The weight digs into your shoulders. Every step is an effort. You are no longer a graceful hunter. You are a beast of burden hauling your preyers home. When you finally crest the last ridge and see the familiar smudge of smoke from your settlement, a wave of deep relief washes over you. You are exhausted, spattered in blood, and every muscle in your body is screaming. But you are returning successful. You are carrying life. The welcome is not one of cheers but of quiet, purposeful activity. People emerge to help, their faces showing not surprise but a calm appreciation. The meat is a shared resource. Elders direct the unloading, their hands already reaching out to assess the quality of the hide. Children watch with wide, curious eyes, learning the lessons of life and death without a single word being spoken. You have fulfilled your duty. You have provided. You hand over the fruits of your labor and retreat to the fire, the weight of the animal finally lifted from your shoulders, replaced by the familiar weight of your own weary bones. Chapter 4. The path to the mountain's heart, with your duty to the clan fulfilled, a different kind of need asserts itself, a need for quiet, a need to wash the scent of blood and the noise of the camp from your mind. Your world is a constant negotiation between the group and the personal. For most of the day, you belong to the group, but for a few precious hours, you need to belong only to yourself. You catch Kyle's eye across the flickering fire. He's cleaning his spear point, his face a mask of weary concentration. You give a slight, almost invisible nod towards the great limestone mountain that serves as the backdrop to your life, Monte Pellegrino. He understands instantly. No words are exchanged, but the agreement is made. The climb is a pilgrimage. You leave the relative shelter of the camp and begin the ascent. Your legs, which should be screaming in protest, move with a familiar, steady rhythm. The higher you go, the more the world changes. The sounds of the settlement, the chatter, the dogs barking, the crying of a baby fade away, replaced by the rush of the wind and the scuttling of unseen lizards in the rocks. The air becomes cleaner, thinner. It feels like you are walking out of the thick soup of humanity and into a place of pure elements. This is a journey you have made many times. You know every handhold, every dangerous patch of loose rocks, every stubborn, wind-scoured bush. It's a physical challenge, but it's a mental one too. The climb forces you to focus on the immediate, your breath, your balance, the placement of your feet. It's a form of moving meditation, a way of emptying your mind of everything but the mountain itself. After a solid hour of climbing, you reach a broad, flat ledge that serves as your usual resting spot. You collapse onto the sun-warmed stone, your back against a boulder, and finally allow the day's exhaustion to settle in. From here, the view is staggering. The entire coastline is laid out before you like a map. The sea is a vast, wrinkled sheet of beaten silver under the late afternoon sun. Your camp is a toy-like collection of huts, the thin tendril of smoke. From the fire, the only sign of the teeming, complex life within it. From this perspective, everything seems smaller, more manageable. The daily struggles, the small irritations, the constant pressure of survival, it all shrinks in the face of this immense, silent landscape. It's a dose of perspective that you find essential. It reminds you that your life, as all-consuming as it is just a tiny flicker in a world that is ancient and vast beyond understanding. You and Kyle share a drink from a water skin. The cool water a relief to your dry throat. He points, not out to the sea, but up and into the mountain itself. Tucked into a fold in the cliff face, almost perfectly hidden from below, is a dark vertical slash in the rock. It is the mouth of the cave. To the rest of the clan, this cave is a place of spirits, a taboo place, a place you don't go. Unless you are a holy man preparing for a ritual, they fear it. You and Kyle don't fear it. You are drawn to it. It is the quietest place in your entire world. It's the one place you can go where you are truly, completely alone. Or so you think. You make the final short scramble to the entrance. The air spilling out of it is a physical thing, cold, still, and smelling of damp stone and deep, ancient time. It's the smell of a place that has never felt the sun. You stand at the threshold, on the border between the world of light and the world of dark, the world of the living and the world of spirits, and you step inside. Chapter 5, the figures on the wall. The transition is instant and total. One moment, you're in the open air, the wind on your skin, the vast sky above you. The next, you're swallowed by a silence so complete, it feels like pressure on your eardrums. The darkness is absolute, a thick, velvety blackness that makes your eyes useless. For a few moments, you simply stand there, allowing the deep peace of the mountain's heart to settle over you. Kyle gets to work. You hear the familiar sharp click-click scrape of flint striking iron pirate, a miniature lightning storm in the dark. A tiny spark catches in the tinder-dry fungus he carries, glowing like a captured star. He blows on it gently, coaxing it to life, and soon the written-soaked torch he prepared catches, painting the immediate darkness with a flickering orange light. The world is reborn in firelight. The cave is a vast, vaulted chamber. The walls are pale, ghostly limestone, carved by ancient water into flowing, organic shapes. The torchlight sends shadows dancing and skittering into the far corners, making the space feel alive and breathing. Your footsteps, which were silent outside, now echo in the cavernous space, as if the mountain itself is announcing your presence. You move deeper, your shared torch a tiny, brave sun in eternal night. You come to a specific wall, a large, smooth panel that seems to have been chosen for a purpose. And as you raise the torch higher, they reveal themselves. They are not paintings. They are engravings, scratched into the rock with a sharp flint point by a hand that trembled with either genius or madness. A crowd of human figures, 15 or 16 of them, cover the wall. They are not static. They are caught in a moment of frantic, joyful motion. A ring of what look like dancers, many wearing strange, bird-like masks, or elaborate headdresses, swirl around a central, shocking scene. At the heart of the vortex are two men. Their bodies are thrown back in an impossible, violent arch, a posture of either supreme agony or transcendent ecstasy. You can't tell. Ropes or cords appear to bind them, looping around their necks and ankles, forcing them into this bow-like shape. They are naked, vulnerable, and utterly captivating. The artist took care to define their forms, the taut muscles of their backs, the clear rendering of their manhood. They are the anchor of the chaos, the still point around which the entire wild ceremony revolves. You've seen this scene a dozen times, but it never fails to jolt you. It's brutal and beautiful all at once. You run your fingers over the cool, rough lines, trying to understand the mind of the person who carved this. What were they trying to say? You look at Kyle. His face, illuminated by the torch, is a study in rapt concentration. He is not just looking at the art, he is communing with it. And in his eyes, you see the same thing you feel. This isn't just a random picture. It feels like a story you already know. In a world that has no words for the silent, powerful bond that you share, here it is, carved into the rock for all eternity. Maybe it's not your story. Maybe it depicts a terrifying ritual of human sacrifice that you are lucky to have never witnessed. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's a story about a connection so intense it borders on pain. A trial so profound it becomes a form of worship. a bond between two men that is so central to the life of their community that it has to be recorded in the most sacred of places. Looking at the two arched figures, you don't see victims, you see power. You see a terrifying and beautiful truth. In the deep, silent dark of the mountain, surrounded by the ghosts of your ancestors, you feel a startling sense of recognition. This strange, violent, beautiful picture on a cave wall, it makes you feel seen. Chapter 6, a flash of light in the darkness, and so the figures remained, holding their silent, strenuous pose in the heart of the mountain for 13,000 years. The world outside was completely remade. The climate warmed. The great ice sheets to the north vanished, and the sea rose, turning your home into a proper island. The descendants of the red deer you hunted still roamed the hills, but the people, the language, the entire world you knew, dissolved like a footprint in the rain. New cultures arrived with boats and pottery and strange new gods. Great empires, the Greeks, the Romans, the Normans built their magnificent, noisy cities on the coast, fought their epic, bloody wars, and wrote their self-important histories, all while living directly on top of a secret they could never have imagined. A slow landslide, a geological sigh, eventually sealed the mouth of the cave, locking the door and swallowing the key. The mountain kept its silence. That silence would have lasted forever if it weren't for the unique talent of 20th century humans for making very loud, earth-shattering noises in the name of progress and patriotism. During the Second World War, in the chaotic aftermath of the Allied invasion of Sicily, a squad of soldiers needed a place to store a large quantity of bullets and explosives. They found what looked like a perfectly serviceable, dry, and entirely uninteresting cave on the slopes of Monte Pellegrino. They stacked the crates of metal and explosives inside, and as armies do, promptly moved on and forgot about it. In 1943, that forgotten arsenal exploded. Whether it was a stray spark, a slow-burning fuse from a wildfire, or an act of sabotage, we will never know. The result was a colossal blast, a man-made volcano that ripped through the cave with unimaginable force. It was a moment of pure modern violence inflicted on an ancient sacred space, and in a perfect example of history's deadpan humor, this act of destruction was also an act of creation. The blast sheared away the outer layers of the limestone walls, the crust of millennia, the coating of time, the slow build-up of mineral, and revealed the fresh, pale stone that lay beneath, a canvas that had not seen the light of day since the last ice age. The war ended. The world exhaled. And in 1952, an Italian archaeologist named Joel Bovio Marconi was conducting a survey of the caves, documenting whatever fragments of the past had survived. She entered the blast-damaged cave, perhaps expecting to find little more than scorch marks and shattered rock. She clicked on her flashlight, its beam cutting a small, lonely circle in the immense dark. As she swept the light across the walls, it fell upon the surface that had been flayed open by the explosion, and she froze. Imagine the scene, the smell of stale explosives still hanging in the air, the crunch of debris underfoot, and then, in the cone of a simple flashlight beam, a lost world leaps out of the darkness, a swirling vortex of masked figures, a mysterious, powerful, and deeply human scene, untouched and unseen for 130 centuries. It would have been like finding a photograph of your great-great-great. You can add about 500 more greats here, grandfather. She knew instantly what she had found, and the archaeological world was electrified. But the joy of discovery quickly gave way to a much more difficult question. What on earth does it mean? And this is where the real fun began, as academics settled in for a multi-generational argument. The first, and for a long time the most popular interpretation, was grim. Many respected archaeologists, like Paolo Graziosi, looked at the scene and saw a public execution. They pointed to the ropes, the agonizingly arched backs, and identified it as a depiction of a specific ritual sacrifice, known as incapretamente, brutal method of strangulation where the victim's neck is tied to their bent-back ankles. They argued the surrounding figures were not dancers but witnesses, judges, or executioners presiding over a grim act of tribal justice. To them, it was a display of power, a warning, a human sacrifice to appease angry gods. But Joel Bovio Marconi, the woman who found it, fundamentally disagreed. She argued that to see only death was to miss the point entirely. She saw life. She pointed to the fluid, graceful lines of the figures, the rhythmic, joyful energy of the surrounding circle. She argued that the prominent male anatomy was not incidental, but a celebration of virility and life force. In her eyes, this was no execution. It was a sacred rite, a mysterious ceremony that was intensely and perhaps explicitly homoerotic. She saw the arched figures not as victims in their death throes, but as initiates in a trance, enduring a physical ordeal to achieve a higher spiritual state, a ceremony of ecstatic union, not brutal finality. And as the years went on, other theories emerged, trying to split the difference. Perhaps the figures are holy men, their contorted bodies representing the painful physical journey into the spirit world. Maybe they are acrobats performing a dangerous, ritualized dance for the community. The The truth is, we don't know. The engravings offer no captions, no helpful user manual. They remain deeply, beautifully, and perhaps deliberately unclear. They are a silent testament from your world, a single complex scene that asks 1,000 questions and answers none of them, leaving us to argue over the ghosts of your past. So what we are left with at the end of our day in 11,000 BCE is more than just the story of a hunt. We are left with the deep realization that these distant ancestors, who we often imagine as simple or primitive, lived lives of immense complexity and feeling. They experienced not just the harsh realities of survival, but also deep personal bonds, a need for spiritual expression, and the universal human impulse to translate their most powerful ideas into lasting art. The figures you saw in the cave were the manifestation of that impulse, a story so important it had to be carved into the very bones of the earth. As our journey through the Addaura Cave concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. Until our next archaeological adventure together, this is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Sweet dreams, fellow explorers, and may your rest be filled with wonder at the remarkable tapestry of human history. Good night. Good night.
For centuries, we've been fed this delightful little story about ancient Carthage. You know the one, where Carthaginians were basically the Mediterranean's answer to cartoon villains, sacrificing babies left and right while Romans nobly swooped in to save civilization. It's the kind of historical narrative that makes Dave the Roman soldier look like Captain America, and Brenda the Carthaginian priestess look like she's auditioning for a horror movie. This version of history comes to us courtesy of the Romans, who had about as much objectivity regarding Carthage as a sports commentator has about their home team. They won the wars, so they gotta write the history books. That's completely wrong. Tonight, you are Hamilcar, not the famous general, but a successful merchant in 3rd century BCE Carthage, at the height of the city's power. You're standing on the docks of the greatest trading empire the Mediterranean has ever seen. Watch ships from 3 continents unload goods that would make modern Amazon executives weep with envy. You live in a cosmopolitan metropolis where Greek philosophy mingles with Egyptian engineering, where Nubian gold finances Iberian silver mines, and where your daily vocabulary includes curse words in at least 4 languages. The proof of your sophisticated life lies scattered across museums today. Intricate jewelry that required master craftsmanship, complex harbor, engineering that wouldn't be matched for centuries, and writing system that recorded everything from grocery lists to international treaties. In 1921, archaeologists uncovered your neighborhood's residential district, finding heated floors, sophisticated plumbing, and artwork so refined that it forced scholars to completely reconsider who the barbarians actually were. The discovery was so thorough, so undeniably advanced, that even the most Roman-biased historians had to admit they'd been telling the wrong story for 2,000 years. Good evening, fellow explorers. This discovery, made in the Bursa Hill excavations of Carthage, reveals something extraordinary about life in the ancient world's most successful trading empire. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in North Africa over 2 millennia ago. But before we begin this journey together, write in the comments where you are listening from. It's fascinating to learn where in the world you are. Also, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Now, dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about ancient civilization. Chapter 1. Dawn in the greatest port of the ancient world, you wake not to an alarm clock but to the rhythmic chanting of dock workers already hauling Egyptian grain from ships that arrived on the night tide. The sound drifts through your bedroom window, which actually has glass. Thank you very much. Not the animal hide shutters that Romans would have you believe all barbarians used. Your bedroom overlooks the circular military harbor, one of the most ingenious pieces of naval engineering the ancient world ever produced. 2 harbors. Actually, the outer commercial port, where merchant vessels crowd like ancient shopping malls, and the inner military harbor, where your navy ships rest in individual covered slips, protected from both weather and prying eyes. The morning air carries the scent of cedar from Lebanese timber, cinnamon from distant India, and the salt tang of the Mediterranean, mixing with something less pleasant. The neighborhood's shared latrines, which at least had the courtesy of being connected to a proper sewage system. Your city's sanitation would make most medieval Europeans jealous, but it's still ancient. Plumbing, which means certain odors are simply part of the morning routine. You stretch in your bed an actual mattress stuffed with wool and cotton, not straw like some barbarian, and pet across floors heated by a hypocaust system that won't be seen in Northern Europe for another few centuries. The morning routine begins with a splash of water from your private cistern fed by an aqueduct system that brings mountain spring water directly to your neighborhood. Your reflection wavers in a polished bronze mirror as you trim your beard with iron scissors that would pass quality control in most modern factories. The servants have already prepared your morning bath in the small chamber adjacent to your bedroom, where hot water flows through lead pipes embedded in the walls. The water temperature is controlled by adjusting bronze valves that regulate the flow from the heated hypocaust system below, technology that Romans will later claim they invented. Despite finding fully functional versions in every Carthaginian house they loot, you soap yourself with olive oil mixed with ash from burnt seaweed, scraping the mixture off with a curved bronze strigil that doubles as a status symbol. The morning ablutions include brushing your teeth with a mixture of ground pumice and mint, because in ancient times nobody wanted to conduct business with someone who had the breath of a deceased fish outside your window. Carthage is already alive with the organized chaos of international commerce. Ox carts lumber path carrying pottery jars of wine and olive oil, their wooden wheels creating a percussion section that accompanies the multilingual arguments of merchants haggling in Phoenician, Greek, Egyptian, and Berber. A group of Nubian traders examines bolts of purple cloth, genuine Tyrian purple, the ancient world's most expensive dye, worth more per ounce than gold. The irony isn't lost on you that the barbarian city of Carthage controls the luxury market that makes Roman senators bankrupt themselves trying to afford a single toga stripe. Your wife, Sophoniba, joins you at the window, pointing out the morning's arrivals in the harbor. She's wearing a linen tunic dyed with madder red and decorated with gold thread embroidery. Not because she's trying to impress anyone, but because successful Carthaginian women are expected to display the family's commercial success through their appearance. The ship from Gades arrived early, she observes, reading the harbor signal with the same expertise you'd expect from a modern port authority manager. They're flying the flag for precious metals, which means either you're Spanish, silver has arrived, or someone's about to make you a very wealthy man. The morning news network in ancient Carthage operates through flag signals, smoke signals, and the gossipy efficiency of dock workers who know everything about everybody's business. Your breakfast consists of honey cakes, fresh figs, and barley porridge flavored with dates, not because you can't afford better, but because you genuinely enjoy the combination. A cup of wine mixed with water starts your day, the wine imported from your own vineyards in Sicily. Yes, you own property on multiple continents, which makes you either an ancient multinational corporation or a very successful example of economic imperialism, depending on your perspective. The Romans will later claim they invented international trade, but you're living proof that Carthaginians were running global supply chains, while Rome was still figuring out how to pave roads. The family breakfast includes your children, who are receiving education that would make modern international business schools envious. Your son, Hannibal, yes, that was a popular name long before the general made it famous, practices his Greek verb forms while calculating exchange rates between Phoenician shekels and Egyptian debans. Your daughter, Dido, works through a mathematics problem involving the optimal loading configuration for ships carrying mixed cargo, because Carthaginian girls from merchant families are expected to be as commercially savvy as their brothers. The breakfast conversation shifts between languages as naturally as modern families flip between television channels, with Egyptian phrases for discussing grain prices, Greek terms for philosophical concepts, and Berber expressions for describing weather patterns that affect shipping schedules. Chapter 2. The business of empire. Your morning commute involves walking 3 blocks through neighborhoods that would make ancient urban planners weep with envy. Carthage's residential districts follow a grid system with wide streets designed for cart traffic, underground drainage to handle North African downpours, and public fountains positioned at regular intervals. The houses rise 2 and 3 stories, their white plastered walls decorated with painted geometric patterns in red and blue. Upper floors overhang the streets slightly, providing shade and maximizing living space in a way that wouldn't look out of place in a modern Mediterranean city. The streets themselves are engineering marvels that Romans will later imitate without acknowledging the source. Stone paving blocks fitted with mathematical precision allow cart traffic while providing drainage channels for rainwater. Street corners feature public latrines connected to a sewage system that carries waste to treatment facilities outside the city walls, where it's processed into fertilizer for agricultural use. Public slaves, municipal employees, really sweep the streets at dawn and dusk, empty the garbage container, position at regular intervals, and maintain the oil lamps that provide street lighting. It's urban infrastructure planning that won't be matched in European cities until the Renaissance, designed by people whom Roman propaganda portrays as primitive barbarians. Your destination is the Agora, the commercial district where the real business of empire happens. Here, beneath canvas awnings that flutter in the morning breeze, you'll spend your day orchestrating trade deals that span from Britain to India. Your specialty is what modern economists would call commodities arbitrage, buying raw materials in one market and selling finished goods in another, with Carthaginian craftsmen adding value in between. Today's agenda includes negotiating the purchase of British tin, arranging transport for Spanish silver, and finalizing a contract to supply Egyptian wheat to Greek colonies. The Agora's architecture reflects the international nature of Carthaginian commerce. Covered walkways protect merchants and customers from sun and rain, while stone tables provide surfaces for examining goods and conducting negotiations. Each merchant stall includes locked storage areas for valuable items, scales certified by city authorities for accurate measurements, and writing materials for recording transactions. The babel of languages creates a constant background buzz: Phoenician, Greek, Egyptian, Berber, Celtic, Iberian, and increasingly Latin from Roman merchants who are becoming uncomfortably aggressive in their business practices. Interpreters move through the crowds, earning good money by facilitating conversations between traders who share no common language except the universal dialect of profit margins. The complexity of your business would impress modern logistics managers. You maintain detailed records, written in Phoenician script on papyrus, imported from Egypt, tracking inventory, shipping schedules, and currency exchange rates across dozens of markets. Your accounting system uses standardized weights and measures, established exchange rates between different regional currencies, and sophisticated credit arrangements that allow merchants to conduct business without hauling chests of silver across the Mediterranean. Romans will later claim they invented banking, but your financial instruments are already sophisticated enough to fund expeditions to West Africa and establish trade relationships with Baltic amber dealers. Your business ledgers would fascinate modern accountants with their sophisticated double-entry bookkeeping systems and risk assessment calculations. Each trading voyage is analyzed for potential profit margins, weather risks, political instability in destination markets, and seasonal demand fluctuations. You maintain detailed files on trading partners across the Mediterranean, including their credit histories, preferred payment methods, and cultural customs that affect business relationships. The filing system uses cross-referenced scrolls organized by geographic region, commodity type, and seasonal timing and information management system that allows you to locate specific contracts or correspondence within minutes, despite dealing with hundreds of business relationships across dozens of cities. The morning's first appointment is with Massinissa, a Numidian horse trader whose animals are considered the finest cavalry mounts in the ancient world. He arrives leading a string of horses that make Arabian thoroughbreds look pedestrian, lean, intelligent animals bred for desert warfare and capable of covering vast distances on minimal water. The negotiation takes place in a mixture of Phoenician and Berber, with occasional Greek phrases for technical terms. You're arranging to supply these horses to Greek city-states who need cavalry for their endless wars, while Massinissa wants payment in iron tools manufactured by your city's metalworkers. These animals can travel 80 miles in a day across desert terrain. Massinissa explains in accent Phoenician, running his hand along a mare's flank to demonstrate the muscle definition. But more importantly, they're intelligent enough to find water sources that human scouts would miss. The Greeks understand horseflesh, but they don't understand desert horses. These animals will give their cavalry advantages that could decide battles. The negotiation includes technical discussions about feeding requirements, breeding capabilities, and the logistics of transporting live animals across the Mediterranean, considerations that require expertise in veterinary medicine, naval architecture, and international law regarding livestock transportation. The horse deal illustrates the global nature of Carthaginian commerce. The iron comes from Spanish mines you partially own, smelted using techniques learned from Hittite metalworkers, shaped by craftsmen trained in Egyptian methods, and sold to Greeks who will use it to fight wars that will ultimately benefit Carthaginian trade. It's a level of international economic integration that won't be seen again until the modern era, orchestrated from a city that Roman propaganda portrays as a collection of primitive sacrificing savages. The afternoon brings a more complex negotiation with El Turbal, captain of a ship that specializes in long-distance exploration voyages beyond the Pillars of Hercules. His weathered face and silver-streaked beard testify to decades of ocean voyaging, and his story include encounters with peoples and places that won't appear on Roman maps for centuries. We've established trading posts along the African coast as far south as the Great River, he reports, referring to what modern geography would call the Senegal River. The kingdoms there have gold, ivory, and exotic woods. But they want manufactured goods, weapons, tools, jewelry, and textiles. It's a profitable run, but it requires 6 months and crews willing to risk everything for the potential returns. By mid-morning, you're deep in negotiations with Xenophanes, a Greek philosopher turned merchant who represents a consortium of Sicilian wheat buyers. The conversation shifts between commercial terms and philosophical discussion about the nature of justice and international trade, because in the ancient world, successful merchants were expected to be intellectually sophisticated, not just good at counting coins. You debate Aristotelian concepts of fair exchange, while calculating shipping costs for grain vessels, the kind of multifaceted conversation that would confuse modern business schools. The question Xenophanes muses while examining samples of Egyptian wheat is whether profit represents value creation or value extraction. Aristotle argues that fair exchange occurs when both parties benefit equally, but how do we measure benefit when dealing with different cultures, currencies, and needs? It's the kind of philosophical discussion that occurs regularly in Carthaginian commercial circles, where successful business requires understanding not just market prices but cultural values, religious practices, and political systems across dozens of societies. The wheat negotiation involves considerations of harvest timing, storage requirements, shipping logistics, and insurance against piracy factors that require expertise in agriculture, meteorology, naval architecture, and military strategy. Chapter 3. The cosmopolitan metropolis midday brings you to the Bursa Hill, Carthage's acropolis and religious center, where the city's international character is most visible. The climb up stone steps worn smooth by centuries of feet takes you past temples dedicated to deities from across the known world. The great temple of Ishman, god of healing, employs priests who practice medicine learned in Egyptian schools. The temple of Tanit, Carthage's patron goddess, features architectural elements that blend Phoenician traditions with Greek innovations, Egyptian engineering techniques. The temple complex represents the theological sophistication of Carthaginian religion, which Roman historians dismissed as primitive superstition. The temple of Tanit includes a medical school where priests study anatomy using detailed Egyptian texts, practice surgical procedures on animal subjects, and maintain extensive libraries of pharmaceutical knowledge gathered from trading partners across 3 continents. The temple's healing chambers feature hot and cold water therapy pools, massage rooms equipped with oils and herbs from distant lands, and diagnostic chambers where patients are examined using techniques that combine Mesopotamian medical traditions with Greek scientific methodology. It's healthcare infrastructure that won't be matched in European cities for over 1,000 years. The religious diversity reflects your city's commercial pragmatism. When you trade with Greeks, you honor their gods. When you deal with Egyptians, you show respect for their deities. When you negotiate with Berber tribes, you acknowledge their ancestral spirits. This isn't theological confusion. It's sophisticated international diplomacy disguised as religious tolerance. Romans, with their rigid pantheon and cultural chauvinism, will never understand how religious flexibility can be a competitive business advantage. The Temple District also serves as Carthage's international diplomatic center, where foreign ambassadors conduct official business and cultural exchange. The Temple of Melkart houses a library containing treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic correspondence with kingdoms from Britain to India. Priests, scribes maintain these documents in multiple languages, provide translation services, and legal advice for international contracts. The temple's meeting halls include facilities for hosting foreign dignitaries, complete with kitchens capable of preparing foods according to various religious dietary restrictions and customs. It's a level of international sophistication that Romans, with their submit or die diplomatic philosophy, will never appreciate. Your lunch appointment is at the house of Adherbal, a fellow merchant whose wealth comes from organizing expeditions beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what Romans call the Strait of Gibraltar. His dining room overlooks the circular harbor where ships are arranged like spokes of a wheel around a central island that houses the admiral's headquarters. The meal consists of roasted fish seasoned with black pepper from India, bread made from Sicilian wheat, and wine from Greek vineyards, a menu that represents trade relationships spanning 3 continents. Adherbal's house showcases the international aesthetic of wealthy Carthaginian homes. Furniture includes chairs carved from African ebony, tables inlaid with ivory from Nubian elephants, and couches upholstered with silk fabrics that arrived via overland routes from distant China. The walls display artwork that blends Egyptian, Greek, and Phoenician styles. Painted murals depicting mythological scenes, mosaics showing hunting and fishing activities, and bronze sculptures representing deities from multiple pantheons. It's interior decoration that reflects both wealth and cultural sophistication, designed by people whom Roman propaganda portrays as primitive barbarians living in mud huts. Adherbal's current project involves establishing permanent trading posts along the West African coast, where Carthaginian merchants exchange manufactured goods for gold, ivory, and exotic animals. He describes encounters with African kingdoms whose wealth and sophistication would astonish Europeans, cities with paved streets and multi-story buildings, rulers who wear crowns of hammered gold and conduct diplomatic correspondence in multiple languages. These aren't the primitive societies that later Roman and Arab historians will describe, but complex civilizations with their own trade networks, technological innovations, and cultural achievements. The King of the Gold Coast maintains a standing army equipped with iron weapons and organized according to military principles that would impress any Roman general. Adherbal explains while carving the roasted fish. His capital includes paved streets, public buildings constructed from stone blocks, and water management systems that support a population larger than most Greek cities. They have their own writing system, legal codes, and diplomatic protocols. The trade negotiations require the same formal procedures we'd use when dealing with Egyptian pharaohs or Greek tyrants. These African kingdoms represent trading partners that Romans will never encounter. Societies whose wealth and sophistication will be forgotten by European historians for over a millennium. The conversation turns to navigation technique that won't be rediscovered for over 1,000 years. Carthaginian captains use detailed charts showing wind patterns, current flow, and seasonal weather changes for routes from Britain to tropical Africa. They navigate using star positions, celestial calculations, and sophisticated understanding of magnetic compass variation. Your ships carry standardized equipment, including anchors designed for different sea bottoms, spare sails cut to specific wind conditions, and emergency supplies calculated for voyages lasting months. The technical discussion reveals the scientific sophistication of Carthaginian navigation. Ship captains carry instruments including astrolabes for celestial observations, water clocks for measuring time during ocean voyages, and lead lines marked with standardized measurements for determining water depth. The charts include detailed information about seasonal wind pattern, tidal variations, and underwater hazards that could damage ships. Navigation calculations involve mathematical knowledge of spherical geometry, astronomical observations, and weather prediction, techniques that won't be rediscovered by European sailors for centuries after Roman legions destroy Carthaginian civilization. After lunch, you visit the metalworking district, where craftsmen create goods that will be traded across the known world. The workshops produce everything from agricultural tools to luxury jewelry, using technique that combine Phoenician traditions with innovations learned from trading partners. Iron swords destined for Celtic warriors in Gaul are forged using steel hardening methods learned from Spanish smiths. Gold jewelry for Egyptian nobles incorporates design elements from Nubian artisans and gemstones from Indian merchants. The metalworking district represents the technological heart of Carthaginian manufacturing. Furnaces capable of reaching temperatures over 1,500 degrees Celsius use charcoal and forced air systems that won't be seen in European foundries for centuries. Master craftsmen work with alloy formulations that combine metals from different continents. Tin from Britain, copper from Cyprus, silver from Spain, and gold from Africa. The quality control systems include standardized testing procedures, apprenticeship programs lasting 7 years, and guild organizations that maintain trade secrets passed down through generations. These workshops produce goods so sophisticated that Roman generals will specifically seek out Carthaginian weapons and armor for their own personal use, even while condemning Carthaginian civilization as barbaric. Chapter 4, The Darker Truths of Ancient Life. Late afternoon brings you to the Tophet, the sacred precinct that will become the focus of Roman horror stories for centuries to come. This is where we must address the uncomfortable reality that has dominated discussions of Carthaginian civilization: child sacrifice. The archaeological evidence is undeniable. Thousands of urns containing the cremated remains of infants and young children, buried with inscriptions asking the gods for protection and prosperity. Modern scholarship suggests this was primarily a response to high infant mortality rates, where families offered children who had died naturally to the gods. But some evidence does point to deliberate sacrifice during extreme crisis. The modern archaeological analysis reveals the complex reality behind Roman propaganda. Bone analysis shows that many of the children died from natural causes: malnutrition, infectious diseases, or premature birth complications. The cremation and burial practices follow religious protocols designed to honor the dead and provide spiritual comfort to grieving families. Inscriptions on the urns express parental love, requests for divine protection for surviving children, and promises of charitable works in exchange for divine favor. The language used is consistently formal and religious, suggesting ritualized responses to tragedy rather than casual brutality. Romans, who regularly practiced infanticide through exposure and considered gladiatorial death matches entertainment, condemned the Carthaginian religious practices while ignoring their own systematic cruelty. You approach the Tophet with the same mixture of reverence and dread that a modern person might feel entering a hospital's intensive care unit. This isn't casual brutality. It's a desperate attempt to negotiate with divine forces in a world where children died regularly from diseases that had no cure, where crop failures meant starvation, where military defeat meant slavery or death for entire population. The Romans, who regularly threw prisoners to wild animals for entertainment and left unwanted babies to die of exposure, will condemn Carthaginian religious practices while ignoring their own casual cruelty. The Tophet's architecture reflects the sacred nature of the site, with stone altars carved with religious symbols, covered pavilions protecting funeral urns from weather, and gardens planted with trees and flowers that provide peaceful settings for grieving families. Priests maintain detailed records of burials, religious ceremonies, and charitable donations made by families seeking divine intervention. The site includes facilities for preparing bodies for cremation according to religious law, workshops for crafting funeral urns and memorial stones, and meditation areas where families can pray for departed children. It's religious infrastructure designed to provide spiritual comfort and community support during times of profound grief. The inscriptions on the funeral urns tell stories of grief that transcend cultural boundaries, parents asking Tanit to accept their child's soul, promising charitable works in exchange for divine protection for surviving children, pleading for the gods to prevent future tragedies. The language is formal, ritualistic, but the emotion underneath is universally human. Modern archaeological analysis suggests that most of the children died from natural causes: malnutrition, infectious diseases, or complications from premature birth, and were then offered to the gods as a way of finding meaning in senseless tragedy. Your own experience with the Tophet reflects the personal reality behind archaeological statistics. 3 years ago, your youngest son died during his second winter from a fever that no physician could cure, despite treatment. Using the best medical knowledge available from Egyptian schools, Greek medical texts, and local herbalists, the decision to bury him at the Tophet wasn't about religious fanaticism, but about finding meaning in senseless loss and honoring his brief life according to cultural traditions that provided comfort and community support. The ceremony included prayers for his soul, donations to support orphan children, and memorial rituals that helped your family process grief in a society that understood childhood mortality as a normal part of life. You leave an offering of incense and honey cakes, not for any child sacrifice, but in memory of your own infant daughter who died last winter from a fever that no physician could cure. The Tophet serves as both temple and cemetery, a place where the boundaries between religious duty and personal grief blur together. It's a reminder that ancient life, for all its sophistication and international connection, remain vulnerable to forces that modern medicine has largely conquered. The medical realities of ancient life provide context for religious practices that Romans portrayed as barbaric. Even wealthy Carthaginian families faced infant mortality rates approaching 50%, childhood diseases that had no cure, and medical emergencies that could kill healthy adults within days. Carthaginian physicians practiced sophisticated medicine learned from Egyptian schools, but they lacked antibiotics, surgical anesthesia, and diagnostic techniques that modern medicine considers basic. The religious response to medical helplessness included elaborate funeral rites, charitable works intended to prevent future tragedies, and community support systems that helped families survive devastating losses. Romans dismissed these practices as superstition while offering their own children to gladiatorial schools and military service that guaranteed violent deaths. The evening's business takes you to the harbor district, where ships are arriving on the tide from distant ports. A vessel from Gates Modern Cadiz has brought silver from Spanish mines and news of Roman military movements in Italy. Another ship from Alexandria carries papyrus, exotic spices, and reports of political changes in the Ptolemaic kingdom. A third vessel, weather-beaten from a long voyage, brings amber from the Baltic, furs from north forests, and tales of blonde-haired warriors who live in houses made of wood and thatch. The harbor's evening activity reveals the global intelligence network that supports Carthaginian commerce. Ship captains carry more than trade goods. They bring political news, military intelligence, weather reports, and economic information that affects business decisions across the Mediterranean. The harbor master maintains detailed records of ship arrivals, cargo manifests, and information reports that are compiled into intelligence summaries for government officials and major merchants. It's an information network that rivals modern intelligence services, operated by people whom Roman propaganda portrays as primitive barbarians interested only in profit and child sacrifice. The international news isn't encouraging. Roman armies are growing larger and more aggressive. Roman politicians are making speeches about Carthaginian treachery, and Roman merchants are demanding access to trade routes that Carthage has controlled for centuries. You recognize the pattern. Economic competition disguised as moral outrage, imperial ambitions wrapped in rhetoric about civilization and barbarism. Romans want what Carthage has built, and they're preparing to take it by force, while claiming divine and moral justification. The political intelligence gathered from arriving ships paints a disturbing picture of Roman preparations for total war. Roman senators are demanding not just military victory, but complete destruction of Carthaginian civilization, killing or enslaving the population, demolishing the buildings stone by stone, and erasing all evidence of Carthaginian achievements from history. It's a level of systematic cultural genocide that even hardened Carthaginian merchants find difficult to comprehend. Romans aren't just seeking military victory or commercial advantage. They're planning to destroy an entire civilization and then rewrite history to justify their actions. The evening intelligence briefings discuss Roman troop movements, naval preparations, and diplomatic efforts to isolate Carthage from potential allies who might prevent the coming apocalypse. Chapter 5. Evening in a doomed paradise as the sun sets over the Mediterranean, painting the sky in shades of purple that match the expensive dyes in your warehouse. You climb to the roof terrace of your house for the evening meal. Carthaginian architecture includes these flat rooftops specifically for dining during cool evening hours, with awnings that can be adjusted for wind direction and privacy screens that block neighbors' views. The terrace garden includes potted olive trees, herb gardens for cooking, and flowering plants that attract birds whose songs provide dinner entertainment. The rooftop terrace represents the sophisticated lifestyle of Carthaginian merchant families. Stone benches with cushioned seats provide comfortable dining arrangement, while bronze braziers offer warmth during cooler evenings. The garden includes not just decorative plants but practical herbs for cooking and medicine: rosemary, thyme, mint, and sage grown from seeds imported from different Mediterranean climates. Water features include small fountains fed by the house's plumbing system, creating pleasant sounds that mask conversations from neighbors while providing cooling effects during hot summer evenings. It's domestic architecture designed for comfort, privacy, and entertainment, built by people whom Roman propaganda portrays as living in primitive squalor. Your family gathers for the evening meal. Your wife, Sophoniba, whose education includes literacy in 3 languages and mathematical training that allows her to help manage the business accounts. Your teenage son, Hannibal, who's learning navigation and international law in preparation for joining the family trade. And your daughter, Dido, whose marriage negotiations will soon establish commercial alliances with Numidian trading families. This is domestic life among Carthaginian merchants, intellectually sophisticated, economically complex, and internationally connected. The evening conversation reveals the intellectual sophistication of Carthaginian family life. Sophoniba discusses her afternoon spent reviewing financial records with the family's Egyptian accountant, who uses mathematical techniques learned from Alexandrian schools to calculate complex profit-sharing arrangements with international trading partners. Hannibal describes his navigation lessons, which include studying star charts, calculating distances using geometric principles, and learning weather prediction methods based on cloud formations, wind patterns, and seasonal changes. Dido reports on her language studies. She's becoming fluent in Berber and Latin, skills that will be essential for managing trade relationships with diverse partners who may not speak Phoenician or Greek. The dinner conversation covers topics that would be familiar to any modern international business family. Hannibal describes his studies in Greek geometry and Egyptian engineering knowledge that will help him design warehouse facilities and calculate cargo capacity for different ship designs. Dido discusses her language lessons in Berber and Latin, skills that will be essential for managing trade relationships with diverse partners. Sophonipa reports on the day's financial transactions, including currency, exchange rates, and credit arrangements with merchants in distant cities. The family's educational priorities reflect the practical demands of international commerce. Hannibal's curriculum includes not just navigation and mathematics, but diplomatic protocol, religious customs of different cultures, and legal systems governing international trade. He's learning to negotiate contracts that account for different currency systems, seasonal shipping limitations, and political instabilities that could affect business relationships. Dido's education combines traditional domestic skills with commercial training. She can calculate profit margins as easily as she can manage household servants, design trade agreements as skillfully as she can organize formal dinners for foreign dignitaries. It's educational preparation for lives of international complexity and intellectual challenge. The meal itself represents the global reach of Carthaginian trade network. Roasted lamb seasoned with black pepper from India and cinnamon. From Southeast Asia, bread made from Egyptian wheat and sweetened with honey from Greek islands. Wine from your own vineyard. In Sicily, mixed with water and flavored with herbs from your rooftop garden. Fresh fish caught in the morning by local fishermen, prepared with garum fermented fish sauce. That's the ancient world's equivalent of soy sauce, popular from Britain to Nubia. The evening's menu showcases the sophisticated cuisine of wealthy Carthaginian households. The lamb is stuffed with a mixture of pine nuts from Lebanon, dry fruits from Egyptian oases, and herbs from multiple Mediterranean climates, then roasted using cooking techniques learned from Greek chefs, and served on plates manufactured by local potters using clay from North African quarries. The bread includes flour from different grain varieties, Egyptian wheat for lightness, Sicilian barley for flavor, and local African grains for nutritional value. Even the table wine represents international complexity. Grapes from Sicilian vineyards, aged in amphorae sealed with resin from Lebanese cedar trees and flavored with honey from Greek beehives that produce distinctive flavors based on local wildflowers. After dinner, you walk through neighborhoods that showcase the architectural sophistication of Punic civilization. Houses rise 3 and 4 stories, their white plastered walls decorated with painted murals depicting scenes from mythology and daily life. Street corners feature public fountains fed by the city's aqueduct system, with stone benches where neighbors gather for evening conversation. Oil lamps mounted on poles provide street lighting, making Carthage safer for nighttime movement than most medieval cities would be. The evening stroll reveals the social sophistication of Carthaginian urban life. Neighborhood taverns serve as community gathering places where merchants, craftsmen, and professionals discuss business, politics, and gossip while enjoying wine and light meals. Public bathhouses provide facilities for exercise, socializing, and relaxation, with separate areas for men and women equipped with hot and cold water pools, massage rooms, and libraries where patrons can read while soaking. Street musicians perform songs in multiple languages, combining Phoenician melodies with Greek harmonies, Egyptian rhythms, and Berber instruments to create music that reflects the city's international character. You end the evening at the library and school district, where Carthaginian intellectuals preserve and expand human knowledge. The library contains scrolls in dozens of languages, Phoenician historical records, Greek philosophical texts, Egyptian medical manuals, and Mesopotamian astronomical observations. Carthaginian scholars are making their own contributions to human knowledge, detailed geographical descriptions of African and European coastlines, mathematical treatises on commercial accounting, and agricultural manuals describing crop rotation techniques learned from different climates. The library complex represents the intellectual achievements of Carthaginian civilization. Scribes working in specialized workshops copy important texts from deteriorating papyrus, preserving knowledge that might otherwise be lost. Scholars conduct original research in fields ranging from medicine to astronomy, publishing their findings in treatises that are distributed to libraries across the Mediterranean. The library's collection includes works that won't survive the Roman destruction of Carthage, scientific texts, historical chronicles, and literary works that represent centuries of intellectual development. It's a center of learning that rivals Alexandria, operated by people whom Roman historians will dismiss as illiterate barbarians. Chapter 6. The archaeological vindication as you prepare for sleep. In your comfortable bedroom, with its heated floors and glass windows, you're unaware that everything around you will soon be destroyed, so thoroughly that future generations will doubt it ever existed. Roman armies are already marching toward their final confrontation with Carthage, carrying orders not just to defeat the city, but to erase it completely from history. They will kill or enslave the population, demolish the buildings stone by stone, and spread salt on the ground to prevent anything from growing. For over 2,000 years, the only descriptions of Carthaginian civilization will come from Roman sources, written by people who had every reason to portray their enemies as barbaric and primitive. The systematic destruction of Carthage represents one of history's most complete acts of cultural genocide. Roman legions will spend weeks methodically demolishing buildings, filling in the harbor with rubble, and destroying every trace of Carthaginian achievements. Libraries containing centuries of accumulated knowledge will be burned. Artwork will be smashed or stolen, and technological innovations will be deliberately forgotten. Surviving Carthaginians will be forbidden from speaking their native language, practicing their religion, or maintaining their cultural traditions. It's cultural annihilation so thorough that future historians will have difficulty believing that Carthaginian civilization ever achieved the sophistication that archaeological evidence clearly demonstrates. But archaeology doesn't lie, and the artifacts of your life have survived Roman destruction to tell a very different story. In 1921, French archaeologists working on Bursa Hill uncovered the residential district where you lived, finding evidence of urban planning that wouldn't be matched in Europe for centuries. Your house's foundation still exists, along with remnants of the heating system, fragments of the glass windows, and pieces of the decorated plaster walls. The artifacts recovered from the site, pottery, jewelry, tools, and household goods, demonstrate a level of craftsmanship and international connection that forced scholars to completely reconsider Carthaginian civilization. The Bursa Hill excavations revealed the complete architectural sophistication of Carthaginian residential districts. House foundations showed evidence of multi-story construction using advanced engineering technique, with load-bearing walls designed to support upper floors and rooftop terraces. Plumbing systems included not just water supply pipes but sophisticated drainage network, sewage connections, and bathroom facilities that rivaled modern standards. Heating systems incorporated hypocaust technology, with flue networks that distributed warm air throughout buildings, using engineering principles that wouldn't be rediscovered in Northern Europe for over 1,000 years. The quality of construction and attention to comfort details forced archaeologists to abandon preconceptions about primitive Carthaginian technology. The harbor excavations of the 1970s revealed the engineering genius of Carthaginian naval architecture. The circular military harbor, dismissed by Roman historians as a primitive facility, turned out to be one of the most sophisticated port designs ever conceived. Each ship's slip included individual maintenance facilities, covered construction areas, and administrative offices. The harbor could accommodate over 200 warships, while keeping them hidden from enemy observation. The engineering required precise calculations of water flow, tidal patterns, and structural load distribution that demonstrated mathematical and technical knowledge equal to anything Romans ever achieved. The naval harbor excavations revealed engineering sophistication that amazed modern marine architects. The harbor design included sophisticated water circulation systems that prevent stagnation while maintaining optimal salinity levels for ship maintenance. Each ship slip featured individual dry dock capabilities, allowing vessels to be lifted from the water for hull repairs and maintenance using mechanical systems based on pulleys, levers, and counterweights. The central island included not just administrative buildings but workshops equipped with specialized tools for shipbuilding, weaponry manufacture, and navigation equipment production. The entire complex represented a level of naval infrastructure planning that wouldn't be matched until modern naval bases incorporated similar integrated design principles. Archaeological evidence from Carthaginian trade sites across the Mediterranean and beyond has revealed the true scope of Punic commercial networks. Carthaginian coins have been found in Britain and West Africa, Carthaginian pottery in Baltic archaeological sites, and Carthaginian inscriptions in Spain and Sardinia. The standardized weights, measures, and currency system show economic integration more sophisticated than anything Europe would see again until the modern era. Trade goods from Carthaginian sites include Chinese silk, Indian spices, Baltic amber, and African gold, evidence of commercial relationships that span the known world. Recent archaeological discoveries at Carthaginian trading posts have revealed The global extent of Punic commercial networks. Sites in Morocco contain evidence of regular trade with West African kingdoms, including African. Gold worked by Carthaginian craftsmen and North African goods manufactured for African markets. Spanish excavations have uncovered Carthaginian silver mining operations that use advanced extraction techniques and employed workers from multiple continents. British sites contain Carthaginian manufactured goods traded for local tin, demonstrating commercial relationships that extended far beyond the Mediterranean basin. These discoveries prove that Carthaginian merchants operated truly global trade networks that connected Africa, Europe, and Asia through sophisticated commercial relationships. Recent excavations at Carthaginian sites in Spain, Sicily, and North Africa have uncovered libraries, schools, and scientific instruments that prove Romans systematically lied about Carthaginian intellectual achievements. Medical texts found at Carthaginian sites describe surgical procedures and pharmaceutical compounds unknown to Roman medicine. Mathematical papyri show geometric and algebraic knowledge that wouldn't be rediscovered in Europe until the Renaissance. Astronomical instruments demonstrate an understanding of celestial mechanics that Romans dismissed as primitive superstition. The intellectual achievements revealed by archaeological discovery demonstrate the systematic dishonesty of Roman historical accounts. Carthaginian medical texts describe surgical procedures, including cataract removal, bone-setting techniques, and pharmaceutical preparations using plants from multiple continents. Mathematical treatises show advanced understanding of geometry, algebra, and engineering calculations required for harbor construction and ship design. Astronomical instruments include astrolabes, sundials, and calculation devices that demonstrate scientific knowledge, sophisticated enough to support navigation across open oceans and construction of massive architectural projects. These discoveries prove that Carthaginian civilization achieved intellectual and technical sophistication that Romans systematically suppressed and denied. The Tophet excavations, while confirming some Roman accusations about child sacrifice, had also revealed the complex religious and social context that Roman historians ignored. Many of the burials show evidence of natural death rather than sacrifice, suggesting that the site served primarily as a cemetery for children who died from disease or malnutrition. The inscriptions express parental grief and religious devotion in language that humanizes people whom Romans portrayed as monsters. Modern archaeological analysis has found similar practices at sites across the ancient Mediterranean, indicating that child sacrifice was a response to high infant mortality rates rather than unique Carthaginian barbarism. As you drift off to sleep on this ordinary evening in ancient Carthage, you are surrounded by the achievements of one of history's most sophisticated civilizations, a cosmopolitan, internationally connected, technologically advanced society that Romans destroyed and then spent centuries slandering. The archaeological record has vindicated your people, proving that the real barbarians were often those who claimed to represent civilization. Your comfortable bed, heated floors, and glass windows represent not primitive luxury but the normal lifestyle of successful merchants in a culture that had mastered international trade, urban planning, technological innovation centuries before Rome reached its peak. The tragic irony of Carthaginian civilization lies in its very sophistication, its openness to other cultures, its emphasis on trade rather than conquest, its religious tolerance, and its preference for negotiation over warfare made it vulnerable to Roman military aggression and cultural chauvinism. Carthaginians built a civilization based on commercial cooperation and cultural exchange, while Romans built an empire based on military conquest and cultural domination. The archaeological evidence proves that Carthaginian civilization achieved levels of technological, intellectual, and social sophistication that Romans systematically destroyed and then spent centuries denying. Your comfortable sleep represents the last moments of a doomed paradise. A civilization too sophisticated to survive in a world increasingly dominated by military force and cultural imperialism. As our journey through ancient Carthage concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder until our next archaeological adventure together. This is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Sweet dreams, fellow explorers. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and may your rest be filled with wonder at the remarkable tapestry of human history. But for now, stay tuned as we have a bonus story coming right up. read especially for you by our guest narrator. Let's be honest about Nero for a moment. Popular culture has painted him as the ultimate mad emperor, the guy who supposedly fiddled while Rome burned, fed Christians to lions for fun, and generally acted like a Roman version of every crazy dictator Hollywood has ever created. Picture him as Emperor Kevin, lounging around in purple robes, randomly executing people between binge, watching gladiator fights and composing terrible poetry that everyone had to pretend was brilliant. The historical consensus for centuries was that Nero was basically what you'd get if you gave unlimited power to someone with the emotional stability of a reality TV star. Except here's the thing, most of that image is complete nonsense. Tonight, you are Gaius Servius, personal body servant to Emperor Nero, Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus. In the year 64 CE, you wake up not in some Hollywood dungeon, but in surprisingly comfortable servant quarters within the sprawling Domus Aurea, Nero's golden house. And your job isn't surviving random acts of imperial violence, but managing the daily needs of Rome's most misunderstood ruler. You're not dodging flying cups thrown by a madman. You're coordinating the schedule of a surprisingly capable administrator who happens to have strong opinions about artistic expression and urban planning. And yes, you were there when Rome burned, but not because your emperor was playing music while watching it happen. In 2019, archaeologists working in the buried remains of Nero's Domus Aurea uncovered a series of servant quarters complete with detailed duty rosters carved into marble tablets. These weren't the hastily scrawled notes you'd expect from terrorized slaves, but carefully organized schedules showing a complex hierarchy of specialized servants managing everything from the emperor's extensive wardrobe changes to his daily vocal exercises. Think of these tablets as the ancient equivalent of a detailed job description, except the job was keeping one of history's most powerful men happy, healthy, and properly dressed for the various roles he played as emperor, performer, and surprisingly hands-on city planner. The archaeological evidence was so detailed that it forced historians to completely reconsider who Nero actually was. Good evening, fellow explorers. This discovery, made in the buried corridors beneath Rome's Oppian Hill, reveals something extraordinary about daily life in the Roman imperial palace during one of history's most turbulent periods. As we settle in tonight, we want to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly complex relationship between absolute power and the people who made that power function day by day. But before we begin this journey together, write in the comments where you are listening from. It's fascinating to learn where in the world you are. Also, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Now, dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about both imperial service and one of Rome's most misrepresented emperors. Chapter 1. Dawn duties and morning routines. The rooster hasn't even started its morning complaints when you're already awake. Not because some cruel overseer is beating a gong, but because you've learned that getting a head start on the day is the difference between smooth imperial operations and the kind of chaos that makes everyone's life miserable. Your quarters in the Domus Aurea are far from luxurious, but they're not the cramped cells you might expect. You have a small but private room with a proper bed, a wash basin, and even a small window that lets in the early morning light filtering through the palace gardens. The walls are painted with simple but elegant frescoes, because even servant areas in Nero's palace reflect his obsession with beautiful surroundings. It's like working for a boss who's genuinely bothered by ugly surroundings, which sound lovely until you realize you're responsible for maintaining those standards. Your first task is checking the emperor's schedule, which is written on wax tablets and updated constantly by his various secretaries. Nero doesn't keep normal hours. He's notorious for staying up late working on poetry, practicing his singing, or holding meetings with architects about his latest building project. Today's schedule shows a morning meeting with senators about urban planning probably related to his ongoing reconstruction projects, followed by vocal exercises with his music teacher, then an afternoon reviewing designs for the new amphitheater. This isn't the schedule of a mad tyrant randomly terrorizing subjects. It's the schedule of someone juggling the administrative demands of running an empire with serious personal interests in arts and architecture. Think of it like managing the calendar of a CEO who's also a passionate musician and urban planner. Except if the CEO makes a mistake, people die. And if you make a mistake, you might die. The emperor's private chambers are a marvel of Roman engineering and Nero's personal taste. The walls are covered in frescoes depicting mythological scenes, not random decoration. but carefully chosen stories that reflect Nero's understanding of his role as emperor. The ceiling features a rotating dome that mimics the movement of the heavens, powered by a complex system of hidden gears and counterweights. The floor is heated by hypocausts, making the marble warm beneath your feet even in winter. This isn't showing off for its own sake. It's the physical manifestation of Nero's belief that the emperor should live in surroundings worthy of Rome's greatness. Of course, the practical effect is that you spend a lot of time making sure every surface sparkles and every mechanism functions perfectly. Waking Nero requires a delicate touch. He's not one of those emperors who springs out of bed ready to conquer barbarians. He wakes slowly, often humming melodies from whatever composition he was working on the night before. You begin by quietly opening the shutters to let in natural light, then preparing the morning wine mixture. Warm wine mixed with honey and spices served at exactly the temperature he prefers. Too hot, and he'll wince and complain about how it affects his vocal cords. Too cold, and he'll assume you don't take his morning routine seriously. Getting it right requires the kind of attention to detail that would make a modern barista weep with recognition. The emperor's morning washing routine is an elaborate affair involving multiple servants, each with specialized roles. You're responsible for coordinating this process, which means ensuring that the bath water is the right temperature, the oils are properly warmed, and the various attendants arrive in the correct sequence. Nero takes his personal hygiene seriously, partly for health reasons, partly because he genuinely enjoys the sensory experience of a proper Roman bath, and partly because he never knows when he might need to make a public appearance. Watching him prepare for the day, you're struck by how ordinary he seems. In these moments, just a man in his 30 seconds who happens to have absolute power over the known world. Worried about whether his hair looks right and whether his voice sounds clear. Breakfast is served in Nero's private dining room, and you're responsible for ensuring everything meets his standards. This isn't about exotic delicacies or obscene luxury. Nero actually prefers relatively simple morning meals. Fresh bread, honey, cheese, olive, and seasonal fruit, along with watered wine and occasionally some light meat. What matters isn't extravagance, but quality and presentation. The bread must be perfectly fresh, the honey clear and flavorful, the cheese at the right firmness. You've learned to taste everything beforehand, not because you're worried about poison, though that's always a background concern in imperial service, but because Nero notices when food isn't at its best and interprets it as a lack of care for his well-being. During breakfast, Nero often discusses his plans for the day, and you're expected to listen carefully and ask intelligent questions. This isn't small talk. He's genuinely interested in feedback, especially about practical matters. If he's planning to inspect construction sites, you might remind him about weather conditions. If he's meeting with foreign ambassadors, you help him review the appropriate protocols. This morning, he's excited about new acoustic techniques his architects are developing for public venues, and he spends 10 minutes enthusiastically explaining how sound travels differently through various types of stone. Listening to him, you realize that the popular image of Nero as an incompetent ruler obsessed with trivial pursuits misses the point. He's obsessed with details because he believes those details matter for Rome's greatness. The morning routine concludes with selecting the emperor's outfit for the day, which is more complex than you might expect. Nero owns dozens of togas in different styles and colors, each appropriate for different types of occasions. Meeting with senators requires traditional white wool with a purple stripe. Visiting construction sites calls for more practical clothing that still maintains imperial dignity. Public performances demand specially designed garments that allow for dramatic movement while still looking appropriately regal. You've become expert at reading Nero's mood and the day's requirement to select clothing that makes him feel confident and comfortable. It's like being a personal stylist for someone whose fashion choices have political implications. As the morning routine nears completion, you brief Nero on any messages that arrived overnight, updates from his various administrators, and reminders about important appointments. He listens carefully, asking questions and occasionally changing his schedule based on new information. This is when you see most clearly that beneath the artistic temperament and love of performance, Nero takes his administrative responsibilities seriously. He may have strong opinions about architecture and music, but he also understands that the empire requires constant attention to function properly. The morning ends with him striding off to his first appointment of the day, leaving you to coordinate with the other servants and prepare for whatever the rest of the day might bring. Chapter 2. Managing the emperor's artistic ambitions. If you thought serving a militaristic emperor would be challenging, Try managing the daily schedule of one who's convinced he's destined for artistic greatness. Nero's relationship with the arts isn't a casual hobby or political show. It's a consuming passion that shapes nearly every aspect of his life, and by extension, your working day. Shortly after the morning's administrative duties, you find yourself coordinating what can only be described as the ancient world's most high-stakes rehearsal schedule. Nero genuinely believes that his artistic achievements will be remembered long after his military conquests are forgotten, and he may actually be right, though probably not in the way he intended. The Emperor's music room is a testament to both Roman engineering and Nero's particular obsession. The space features carefully calculated acoustics with curved walls designed to enhance vocal resonance and strategic placement of sound-absorbing materials to eliminate echoes. Multiple lyres, citharas, and other stringed instruments hang from specially designed racks, each maintained in perfect condition by a team of specialized servants. The room even includes a complex system of wax tablets for recording musical notation. Nero composes original pieces and expects them to be preserved with the same care as important state documents. You've learned to read his musical notation well enough to help organize his compositions, which feels surreal until you remember that in ancient Rome, musical literacy was considered as important as any other form of education. Nero's vocal exercises begin promptly at the designated time, and your role involved much more than simply ensuring he has warm honey wine for his throat. You coordinate with his voice teacher, a Greek freedman named Terpnos, who takes his job with deadly seriousness. Terpnos has developed a systematic approach to vocal training that involves breathing exercises, scales, and careful attention to posture and gesture. You're responsible for managing the timing of these sessions, ensuring the room is at the proper temperature. Too cold affects vocal cords, too warm makes concentration difficult. And recording Terpnos' observations about the Emperor's progress, watching Nero work with genuine dedication to improve his singing technique, you're struck by how seriously he approaches something that Roman traditionalists consider beneath imperial dignity. The Emperor's repertoire includes both traditional Roman songs and his own original compositions, which tend toward dramatic themes drawn from Greek mythology. His favorite pieces involve tragic heroes facing impossible choices: Orpheus losing Eurydice, Oedipus discovering his fate, refugees founding new cities. These aren't random selections. Nero sees parallels between mythological figures and his own position as emperor. When he sings about Aeneas carrying his father from burning Troy, he's not just performing entertainment. He's exploring ideas about duty, sacrifice, and the burden of leadership. Whether his artistic interpretations are actually good is beside the point. What matters is that he approaches them with genuine intellectual and emotional engagement. Managing Nero's performance schedule requires diplomatic skills that would challenge a modern talent agent. He regularly performs at private gatherings for senators and other high-ranking Romans, and these events must be carefully orchestrated to maintain the illusion that attendance is voluntary, while ensuring that important people actually show up. You coordinate with the palace staff to send invitations, arrange seating that reflects proper social hierarchy, and manage refreshments appropriate for the occasion. The tricky part is that Nero genuinely wants honest feedback about his performance, but most of his audience is too terrified to offer genuine criticism. You've learned to identify the few people whose opinions Nero actually trusts, and ensure they attend events where their input might be valuable. The Emperor's interest in dramatic performance extends beyond music to actual theatrical production. He's been working on a dramatic adaptation of the Trojan War that he intends to perform publicly, and your duties include helping him rehearse lines, coordinating costume fittings, and managing rehearsals with other performers. This involves working with professional actors who must navigate the delicate challenge of performing alongside someone who can't be upstaged, but who also genuinely wants the production to succeed artistically. The rehearsals reveal Nero's understanding of dramatic technique. He studied Greek theater seriously and has thoughtful ideas about character motivation and staging. Whether those ideas work in practice is another question, but you can't fault his preparation. Nero's artistic pursuits also extend to visual arts, particularly architecture and interior design. He spends hours reviewing plans for new buildings, discussing decoration schemes, and visiting construction sites to ensure his vision is being implemented correctly. You accompany him on these excursions, which means learning enough about Roman construction techniques to follow his conversations with architects and engineers. Nero has strong opinions about proportion, materials, and aesthetic harmony. and he's not shy about demanding changes when something doesn't meet his standards. Watching him examine marble samples or debate the placement of columns, you realize that his artistic sensibilities are genuinely sophisticated, even if his insistence on personal involvement in every detail sometimes slows down practical progress. The afternoon often includes time devoted to what Nero calls creative consultation, meetings with poets, musicians, architects, and other artists whose work he admires. These sessions serve multiple purposes. They allow Nero to stay current with developments in Roman artistic culture, provide opportunities for him to discuss his own projects with knowledgeable colleagues, and demonstrate his commitment to supporting the arts throughout the empire. Your role involves scheduling these meetings, preparing appropriate refreshments, and taking notes on discussions that might influence future imperial projects. The conversations reveal the extent of Nero's artistic knowledge. He's genuinely well-read in Greek and Roman literature, understands technical aspects of music and architecture, and has thoughtful opinions about artistic trends. One of your most delicate responsibilities involves managing Nero's relationship with artistic criticism. While he craves honest feedback, he's also the emperor, which means that negative reviews of his work carry potential political implications. You've learned to identify critics whose opinions Nero respects and to present their feedback in ways that emphasize constructive suggestions rather than fundamental problems. This requires understanding both Nero's artistic goals and his psychological needs. He wants to improve, but he also needs to feel that his efforts are worthwhile and appreciated. It's like being a diplomatic interpreter between the emperor's artistic ambitions and the reality of his abilities. The day's artistic activities typically conclude with Nero spending private time working on personal projects, composing music, writing poetry, or sketching design ideas. During these hours, your main responsibility is ensuring he's not disturbed unless there's a genuine emergency. You've learned to recognize the signs that he's in a productive, creative mood versus times when he's struggling with artistic problems. When things are going well, he hums quietly and works with steady focus. When he's frustrated, he tends to pace and mutter under his breath about technical challenges or aesthetic problems. In either case, your job is to provide a stable, supportive environment where Rome's most powerful man can pursue his dream of artistic greatness. Chapter 3. Navigating Court Politics and Paranoia. Welcome to the most exhausting part of your job, helping Nero navigate the Byzantine world of Roman imperial politics, where every conversation has 3 layers of meaning and every smile might hide a dagger. The popular image of Nero as a paranoid madman, randomly executing people for imaginary slights, isn't entirely wrong. There's definitely paranoia, and there are definitely executions. But the reality is more complex and frankly more terrifying. Nero's suspicion of those around him isn't irrational. It's based on the entirely accurate understanding that half the Roman elite would happily see him dead if they thought they could get away with it. Your job involves helping him manage relationships with people who smile to his face while plotting his downfall, which is like being a social secretary for someone whose dinner guests might literally be planning to poison the appetizers. The imperial court operates on a complex hierarchy of access and influence that would make a modern corporate structure look straightforward. Senators, freedmen, family members, military commanders, provincial governors, and foreign ambassadors all have different levels of privilege and different agendas. Nero must maintain relationships with all these groups while being constantly aware that his position makes him a target for anyone ambitious enough to want the purple. You help manage this by maintaining detailed records of who said what to whom, tracking the constantly shifting alliance between different factions, and briefing Nero on the political implications of seemingly casual social interaction. Your morning briefings include updates on political intelligence gathered by Nero's extensive network of informants. This isn't the stuff of spy novels. It's mostly mundane information about who's been meeting with whom, what topics are being discussed at dinner parties, and which senators have been making what kinds of speeches. But in the context of imperial politics, mundane information can reveal important patterns. If Senator Marcus suddenly starts hosting dinner parties for military commanders, might indicate nothing, or it might indicate the early stages of a conspiracy. Your job is helping Nero distinguish between normal political networking and potentially dangerous plotting, which requires understanding both the personalities involved and the broader political context. Nero's relationship with the Senate is particularly complex and requires careful management. Constitutionally, The emperor is supposed to work with the Senate as a partner in governing Rome. But practically, everyone knows that imperial power trumps senatorial authority. Nero genuinely tries to maintain the fiction of Republican cooperation, but he also knows that many senators resent his power and would prefer a return to the old system. You help prepare him for senatorial meetings by reviewing the backgrounds and positions of individual senators, identify potential sources of support or opposition, and suggesting strategies for building consensus around imperial policies. It's like being a campaign manager for someone who's already won the election, but has to keep winning it over and over again. The emperor's family relationships add another layer of complexity to court politics. Nero's mother, Agrippina, was instrumental in securing his path to power, but their relationship deteriorated as she tried to maintain influence over his decisions and he asserted his independence. His wife, Octavia, comes from the Claudian family and represents important political connection, but their marriage is more about dynastic politics than personal affection. Managing Nero's family obligations requires understanding not just personal dynamics but also the political implications of family conflicts. When Nero argues with his mother, it's not just a family dispute. It's a potential crisis that could affect the stability of the entire government. Foreign relations add yet another dimension to imperial politics. Rome maintains complex relationships with client kingdoms, allied states, and hostile neighbors, all of which require careful diplomatic management. You accompany Nero to meetings with foreign ambassadors, help him prepare for diplomatic receptions, and assist with correspondence related to international affairs. These interactions reveal the extent to which imperial politics extend far beyond Rome itself. Decisions made in the palace affect millions of people throughout the Mediterranean world. Watching Nero negotiate with Parthian ambassadors or review reports from British governors, you're reminded that the paranoia and intrigue of Roman politics have consequences that stretch across continents. One of your most challenging responsibilities involves managing information flow around the emperor. Nero receives reports from administrators throughout the empire, intelligence briefings from his security services, updates on military campaigns, and requests for decisions on countless administrative matters. But he also receives rumors, gossip, and deliberate misinformation from people pursuing their own agendas. Your job is helping him distinguish reliable information from manipulation, which requires understanding the motivations and credibility of various sources. It's like being a fact-checker and intelligence analyst for someone whose decisions affect the fate of millions. The atmosphere of suspicion affects everyone in the imperial household. Servants are constantly aware that their conversations might be overheard and reported, that their loyalty might be questioned, and that association with the wrong person could lead to serious consequences. You've learned to navigate this environment by being scrupulously honest in your dealing with Nero while being carefully neutral in your interactions with other court figures. The goal is to be seen as competent and trustworthy without becoming entangled in the various plots and counterplots that swirl constantly around the imperial court. Nero's responses to perceived threats range from sophisticated political maneuvering to sudden, brutal action. When he suspects someone of disloyalty, he might begin with subtle investigations, reassignment of responsibilities, or social pressure designed to test their reactions. But when he concludes that someone represents a genuine threat to his power or safety, his responses can be swift and final. You've witnessed both approaches, and you've learned that the key to survival involves understanding which situations call for which responses. The emperor's paranoia isn't random. It's a calculated response to real dangers, even if his calculations sometimes lead to tragic mistakes. Managing Nero's political relationships requires constant attention to protocol, precedent, and the subtle signals that communicate respect, favor, or displeasure. The seating arrangement at a dinner party can convey important messages about the emperor's attitude toward various guests. The timing and formality of appointments signal the relative importance of different issues. Even casual conversations are freighted with political significance that extends far beyond their immediate content. You've become expert at reading these signals and helping Nero craft appropriate responses, which feels like being a translator between the emperor's intentions and the complex language of Roman political culture. The exhausting reality is that in Nero's world, there are no purely personal relationships. Everything is political, everything matters, and everyone is watching. Chapter 4. Surviving Nero's violent mood swings. Here's where serving Nero gets genuinely terrifying. And it has nothing to do with him fiddling while Rome burns. The emperor's capacity for sudden, Explosive violence isn't the product of insanity. It's the result of enormous pressure, absolute power, and a personality that responds to stress by lashing out at whatever's closest. You've learned to read the warning signs, the way his jaw tightens when he receives bad news, the particular quality of silence that follows perceived slights, the almost imperceptible change in his breathing when someone says something that strikes him as disloyal or incompetent. Managing these moments requires the reflexes of a bomb disposal expert and the diplomatic skills of someone negotiating international treaties. Except the stakes are measured in human lives, rather than territorial boundaries. Nero's anger typically builds gradually rather than exploding without warning, which gives you opportunities to intervene if you're paying attention. Early signs include increased criticism of routine matters, impatience with normal delays, and a tendency to interpret neutral comments as personal attacks. During these periods, your primary goal is managing his environment to minimize potential triggers. This means ensuring that appointments run on schedule, that servants perform their duties flawlessly, and that anyone who must interact with the emperor understands the importance of being respectful, efficient, and brief. It's like being a crisis manager for someone whose personal moods have the potential to become political disasters. The emperor's violent impulses are often directed at people he perceives as having betrayed his trust or failed in their responsibilities. When a provincial governor sends a report that Nero considers inadequate, when a senate makes a speech that seems to question imperial policy, when a servant makes a mistake that disrupts his daily routine, these can all trigger responses that range from public humiliation to physical punishment to outright execution. Your job involves trying to redirect his anger toward constructive solutions rather than destructive punishment, which require understanding both the specific source of his frustration and the political consequences of various possible responses. One of your most valuable skills involves knowing when to speak and when to remain silent during Nero's angry outbursts. When he's raging about some perceived slight or failure, your first instinct might be to offer reassurance or suggestions, but experience has taught you that premature intervention can redirect his anger toward you instead. You've learned to wait for natural pauses in his tirades, to acknowledge his frustration without necessarily agreeing with his proposed solutions, and to offer alternative perspectives in ways that allow him to save face while reconsidering his initial reactions. It's like being a therapist for someone who could have you killed if he doesn't like your therapeutic approach. The physical manifestations of Nero's anger are genuinely frightening to witness. He's a large man with considerable strength, and when he loses control, he's capable of serious violence. You've seen him throw furniture, strike servants, and order immediate executions in fits of rage. But you've also learned that these explosive moments often pass quickly if they're not escalated by resistance or argument. The key is avoiding direct confrontation while still maintaining enough influence to protect innocent people from becoming casualties of imperial temper tantrums. This requires a delicate balance between self-preservation and moral responsibility that would challenge anyone's ethical framework. Nero's relationship with his family members brings out some of his most dangerous moods. His conflicts with his mother, Agrippina, involve not just personal resentment, but also political calculations about power and influence. When she criticizes his policies or tries to assert maternal authority over imperial decisions, his responses combine genuine anger with cold political calculation. You've witnessed confrontations between them that started as family arguments and escalated into discussions of exile, imprisonment, or worse. Managing these situations requires understanding both family dynamics and their broader political implications, which means being prepared to help clean up messes that affect both personal relationships and government stability. The emperor's treatment of his wife, Octavia, reflects another dimension of his capacity for cruelty. Their marriage was arranged for political reasons, and Nero makes little effort to hide his lack of affection for her. When she displeases him through imagined infidelity, political connections he considers threatening, or simple failure to respond appropriately to his moods, his punishment can be swift and severe. You've had to coordinate household arrangements that effectively amount to imprisonment, supervise the dismissal of her personal servants, and manage communications that isolate her from family and friends. Witnessing the systematic destruction of someone's life for essentially political reasons is one of the most disturbing aspects of imperial service. Military commanders and provincial governors face particular risks when they displease Nero, because their positions give them potential power to threaten imperial authority. When reports arrive suggesting military incompetence, political disloyalty, or simple failure, To meet expectations, Nero's responses can range from reassignment to recall to accusations of treason. You've helped coordinate the aftermath of several such decisions, which involves managing communications with replacement officials, arranging for the transfer of administrative responsibilities, and sometimes preparing for the trials that precede executions. The speed with which successful careers can end in disgrace and death serves as a constant reminder of the precarious nature of power in imperial Rome. Your own survival depends on maintaining Nero's trust while avoiding entanglement in the various conflicts that surround him. This requires a careful balance between loyalty and independence. You must be reliable enough that he depends on you, but not so closely identified with his decisions that you become a target for his anger when things go wrong. You've learned to take credit for successful arrangements while deflecting responsibility for problems toward circumstances rather than personality. It's a survival strategy that feels morally compromising but practically necessary in an environment where the emperor's mood swings can have fatal consequences. The most difficult aspect of managing Nero's violent tendencies involves the moment when you must choose between your own safety and protecting others from his anger. When he orders punishment that seems disproportionate to the offense, when he targets people who are genuinely innocent of wrongdoing. When his rage threatens to escalate into broader political violence, these situations test your courage, your principles, and your understanding of what's possible within the constraints of imperial service. You've learned that direct confrontation is usually counterproductive, but that careful manipulation of circumstances, strategic delays, and appeals to his better nature can sometimes prevent tragedies. The success rate isn't perfect, but the alternative is accepting that your proximity to absolute power comes with no moral responsibilities, which is a conclusion you're not prepared to accept. Chapter 5. The Great Fire and its Aftermath, July 19th, 64 CE. Starts like any other summer day in Rome, hot and dry, with a kind of oppressive heat that makes everyone irritable and looking forward to the cooler evening hours. You wake up in the pre-dawn darkness to prepare for what should be a routine day. Nero has scheduled morning meetings with architects about amphitheater renovation, followed by afternoon rehearsals for an upcoming performance. The emperor is actually in excellent spirits lately, excited about several construction projects and pleased with his progress on a new musical composition. What you don't know as you begin your morning routine is that you're about to witness one of the most catastrophic events in Roman history. And more importantly, you're going to see firsthand how dramatically the popular narrative about Nero's response gets everything wrong. The fire starts in the Circus Maximus area, in the shops beneath the stadium, where merchants store oil, fabrics, and other flammable materials. The initial reports reach the palace around midday, carried by breathless messengers who describe what sounds like a manageable emergency. A significant blaze, certainly, but the kind of urban fire that Rome's firefighting forces handle regularly. You're with Nero when the first messenger arrives, and his immediate response is to summon the prefect of the Vigiles, Rome's fire brigade, and demand detailed reports on the situation. This isn't the reaction of someone who sees the fire as entertainment. It's the response of an administrator dealing with a crisis that threatens his city and his people. As the afternoon progresses, the reports become increasingly alarming. The fire has spread beyond its initial location and is consuming entire neighborhoods. The wind has picked up, carrying embers to buildings far from the original blaze. The narrow streets and closely packed wooden structures of central Rome are creating a perfect storm for uncontrolled conflagration. Nero immediately cancels all his appointments and converts the palace into an emergency command center, summoning fire officials, urban prefects, military commanders, and anyone else whose expertise might help combat the disaster. You spend the next several hours coordinating communications between various officials and ensuring that the emperor has accurate, up-to-date information about the fire's progress. By evening, it's clear that Rome is facing a catastrophe beyond anything in living memory. The fire has jumped the Palatine Hill and is threatening the imperial palace itself. Nero makes the decision to evacuate to his villa in Antium, not because he's abandoning Rome to burn, while he plays music the infamous story that won't die, but because the palace is no longer safe and he needs a secure location from which to coordinate the emergency response. You accompany him on this evacuation, which involves a carefully organized convoy of officials, records, and resources needed to manage the crisis. The journey to Antium takes place through a landscape illuminated by the glow of burning Rome, a sight that's both terrifying and heartbreaking. From Antium, Nero organizes one of the most comprehensive disaster response efforts in ancient history. He orders the opening of public buildings as shelters for refugees, arranges for emergency food supplies to be distributed to displaced families, and coordinates with local authorities throughout the region to provide temporary housing for people who've lost their homes. You help manage the logistics of these relief efforts, which involves tracking thousands of displaced persons, coordinating supply deliveries, and managing communications with officials throughout the affected areas. Watching Nero work during this crisis, you see a side of him that contradicts every popular narrative about his response to the fire. He's focused, compassionate, and utterly dedicated to minimizing the disaster's human cost. The fire burns for 6 days and 7 nights, ultimately destroying 10 of Rome, 14 districts, and leaving hundreds of thousands of people homeless. When Nero returns to survey the damage, he's genuinely devastated by what he sees. Entire neighborhoods have been reduced to ash. Ancient temples and public buildings have been destroyed. And countless Romans have lost everything they owned. His first priority is continuing and expanding the relief efforts, but he's also already thinking about reconstruction. Rather than seeing the fire as purely catastrophic, he begins to envision it as an opportunity to rebuild Rome according to better urban planning principles that might prevent similar disasters in the future. The reconstruction of Rome becomes Nero's greatest project, and then, ironically, one of the sources of his historical unpopularity. His plans call for wider streets, better building codes, more public spaces, and improved infrastructure. All sensible improvements that would make the city safer and more beautiful. But these plans also require enormous amounts of money, and, in some cases, the appropriation of private property for public use. Roman property owners who lost everything in the fire find themselves unable to rebuild on their original sites, because those sites are now designated for public use. The emperor's urban planning vision conflicts with individual property rights, creating resentment that feeds into broader political opposition to his reign. Your role during the reconstruction involves helping Nero manage the political and practical challenges of rebuilding an entire city while maintaining imperial administration and dealing with growing opposition to his policies. This means coordinating with architects and engineers on technical aspects of construction, managing communication with displaced citizens about their property rights, and helping the emperor navigate the political consequences of his reconstruction decisions. The work is exhausting and often frustrating, because every decision involves trade-offs between immediate relief for fire victims and long-term improvements for the city as a whole. The construction of Nero's new palace, the Domus Aurea, becomes a particular source of controversy. The emperor's plans call for a vast complex that incorporates advanced architectural features, extensive gardens, and artistic decorations that would make it one of the wonders of the ancient world. Critics argue that Nero is using public resources and fire-damaged land to build himself a monument to imperial ego. Supporters counter that the palace serves important state functions and demonstrates Rome's continued greatness to foreign visitors. You help manage the practical aspects of this construction while watching Nero struggle with the political costs of his architectural ambitions. The aftermath of the Great Fire reveals both Nero's genuine administrative competence and the political vulnerabilities that will ultimately contribute to his downfall. His disaster response is remarkably effective by any objective measure. He provides immediate relief for fire victims, organizes comprehensive reconstruction efforts, and implements urban planning improvements that will benefit Rome for centuries. But his methods involve unprecedented government intervention in private property, massive public spending, and imperial decision-making that bypasses traditional Roman political processes. The fire and its aftermath become a turning point that demonstrates both Nero's capabilities as a ruler and the fundamental tensions between imperial authority and Roman Republican traditions that will eventually make his position untenable. Chapter 6, Archaeological Legacy and Historical Truth. Fast forward to 1999, when Italian archaeologists working in the buried ruin of Nero's Domus Aurea make a discovery that forces historians to reconsider everything they thought they knew about daily life in the imperial palace. Deep beneath centuries of accumulated debris, they uncover a series of servant quarters that remain sealed since the palace's abandonment following Nero's death. What they find isn't evidence of the mad emperor's reign of terror. that popular history describes, but rather detailed documentation of a complex, well-organized household staff managing the daily operations of Roman imperial government. The preservation is so complete that archaeologists can reconstruct not just the physical layout of servant areas, but also the social relationships, work routines, and personal lives of the people who made imperial power function on a practical level. The most significant discoveries are the marble tablets containing detailed work schedules, job descriptions, and personnel records that reveal how Nero's household actually operated. These aren't the hastily scrawled notes you'd expect from terrorized slaves, but carefully organized administrative records showing a sophisticated hierarchy of specialized servants with clearly defined responsibilities. The tablets list everyone from body servants like yourself to kitchen staff, secretaries, musicians, architects, and security personnel, along with their specific duties, working relationships, and even performance evaluation. Reading these records, modern historians realize that the imperial household functioned more like a complex government bureaucracy than the chaotic court of a mad tyrant. Archaeological analysis of the servant quarter themselves reveals living conditions that challenge assumptions about Roman slavery and imperial service. The rooms are small but well appointed, with proper heating, adequate lighting, and even decorative elements that suggest inhabitants had some control over their personal spaces. Storage areas contain personal belongings, jewelry, writing materials, musical instruments, religious objects that indicate servants maintained individual identities and interests beyond their work responsibilities. The physical evidence suggests that service in Nero's household, while certainly not free, offered better living conditions and more personal autonomy than most forms of ancient slavery. Analysis of food remains, cooking facilities, and dining areas provides insights into the daily routines of imperial servants that humanize the experience of working for one of history's most controversial figures. The kitchens show evidence of preparing both simple, practical meals for everyday consumption and elaborate dishes for special occasions. Storage areas contain remains of high-quality ingredients that suggest servants ate well by ancient standards. Most importantly, the layout of dining areas indicates that servants had social time and space for community interactions, challenging the image of imperial service as isolated, fearful drudgery. Perhaps most significantly, the archaeological evidence includes what appear to be personal letters and diary entries written by servants during Nero's reign. These documents, preserved on wax tablets and papyrus fragments, provide first-hand accounts of daily life in the imperial palace that contradict many elements of the historical narrative transmitted by hostile ancient sources. The servants describe Nero as demanding but fair, interested in their opinions about practical matter, and generally respectful of their expertise in their respective areas of responsibility. While these accounts certainly don't present him as a perfect employer, they also don't support the image of random violence and arbitrary cruelty that dominates popular understanding of his reign. The archaeological record also provides evidence about Nero's actual activity during the Great Fire that definitively contradicts the famous story about him playing music while Rome burned. Analysis of the palace's emergency protocols, preserved in administrative documents, shows that Nero had detailed disaster response plans and that these plans were implemented effectively during the fire. Storage areas contained supplies that were obviously prepared for emergency distribution to fire victims. Most tellingly, the palace's music rooms show no evidence of use during the period when the fire was burning, while the administrative areas show clear signs of intensive activity consistent with crisis management operations. Modern archaeological techniques have also revealed the extent and sophistication of Nero's reconstruction efforts following the Great Fire. Ground-penetrating radar and careful excavation have mapped the new street layouts, build codes, and infrastructure improvements that Nero implemented throughout Rome. These improvements, wider streets, better drainage, fire-proof construction materials, improved public spaces, represent some of the most advanced urban planning of the ancient world. The archaeological evidence suggests that Nero's reconstruction transformed Rome from a chaotic, dangerous, medieval-style city into something approaching a modern urban environment, an achievement that contemporary critics dismissed as wasteful extravagance. The discovery of artistic workshops within the Domus Aurea provides physical evidence of Nero's cultural patronage that helps explain his reputation among artists and intellectuals. These spaces contain tools, materials, and partially completed works that show the emperor was genuinely engaged with contemporary artistic production. Chemical analysis of pigments, sculptural materials, and architectural elements reveals the use of expensive, high-quality materials from throughout the empire. indicating serious investment in artistic excellence rather than mere display of imperial wealth. Workshops also contain evidence of collaborative projects between the emperor and professional artists, suggesting relationships based on mutual respect rather than simple patronage. Recent DNA analysis of remains found in imperial burial areas has provided insights into the demographics and health of palace servants that challenge assumptions about ancient life expectancy and working conditions. The physical evidence suggests that people in imperial service generally lived longer than average Romans, had better dental health indicating superior nutrition, and showed fewer signs of physical trauma than would be expected if palace service involved routine violence or extreme hardship. While this evidence certainly doesn't prove that imperial service was pleasant, it does suggest that work for Nero was considerably safer and healthier than most alternatives available to ordinary Romans. The cumulative weight of archaeological evidence forces a fundamental reconsideration of Nero's reign and character that has implications extending far beyond ancient Roman history. The picture that emerges from material evidence is of a complex figure whose genuine administrative competence, cultural sophistication, and concern for public welfare coexisted with political ruthlessness, personal violence, and authoritarian tendencies that ultimately made him unacceptable to Roman political elites. The archaeological record suggests that the popular image of Nero as a mad tyrant resulted from centuries of historical propaganda rather than objective analysis of evidence. More importantly, it reminds us that the experience of ordinary people living through historical events often differs dramatically from the narratives constructed by political winners and cultural elites. Your life as Nero's personal servant, challenging and dangerous as it certainly was, took place within a context of imperial competence and cultural achievement that the traditional historical record largely ignores. As our journey through life as Nero's personal servant concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder until our next archaeological adventure together. This is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Sweet dreams, fellow explorers. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and may your rest be filled with wonder at the remarkable tapestry of human history.